It began as a routine flight, a silver bird soaring under a perfect sky. Destination hope, dreams, home. But fate had a different plan. A storm brewed within the normalcy. This was no ordinary turbulence. This was the prelude to terror. This was Flight 407's descent into nightmare. Captain Miller, a veteran pilot, steered the aircraft. His calm demeanor was legendary. First Officer Davies, eager and sharp, manned the controls. The cabin crew, efficient and courteous, tended to the passengers. Tourists, businessmen, families, all oblivious to the horror lurking ahead. They were sheep unaware of the wolf's approach. The first sign was a subtle drop in temperature. A shiver ran through the cabin, then came whispers. Faint, unintelligible murmurs dancing at the edge of perception. Passengers exchanged uneasy glances. A child's toy started playing on its own, a discordant melody filling the air. Denials were whispered, but fear had boarded the plane. The whispers grew louder, morphing into disembodied voices. Shadows flickered in the aisles, human-shaped but lacking form. Electrical systems flickered. Lights dimmed, then surged back. Static crackled through the intercom, punctuated by a high-pitched whine. Fear turned to panic. The passengers became prisoners of the unseen force. When systems screamed, the aircraft lurched violently. Oxygen masks dropped, swinging like pendulums of doom. The intercom crackled again. A voice, distorted and inhuman, filled the cabin, a wail of despair, a promise of oblivion. Captain Miller fought the controls, his face bathed in the eerie red glow of the emergency lights. His voice, strained but calm, tried to reassure the terrified passengers. But his words were drowned out by the screams. The turbulence was unlike anything the passengers had ever experienced. It felt as if the very sky was tearing apart. The plane shuddered and groaned, metal straining against the forces of nature. The overhead bins popped open, spilling luggage into the aisles. People clung to their seats, knuckles white, eyes wide with fear. The air was thick with the scent of panic, a mix of sweat and adrenaline. Captain Miller's mind raced. Years of training and experience were put to the ultimate test. He knew the aircraft inside and out, but this was beyond anything he had ever faced. The instruments blinked erratically, alarms blaring in a cacophony of warnings. He had to stay focused, had to keep the plane steady. His co-pilot, equally tense, monitored the systems, calling out readings and adjustments. In the cabin, the passengers were a mix of silent prayers and audible sobs. Some held hands, seeking comfort in the touch of another human being. A child clutched a stuffed animal, eyes squeezed shut, trying to block out the chaos around them. The flight attendants, though equally terrified, moved through the aisles, offering what little reassurance they could. Outside, the storm raged on, lightning illuminating the dark clouds in brief, blinding flashes. The plane was a tiny speck in the vast, angry sky, buffeted by winds that seemed determined to tear it apart. Each jolt felt like a hammer blow, each drop a plunge into the unknown. The world outside was a maelstrom, but inside, it was a battle for survival. Captain Miller's hand tightened on the throttle. He could feel the sweat dripping down his brow, stinging his eyes. He couldn't afford to lose focus, not even for a second. Every decision, every movement was critical. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He had to believe they would make it through this. He had to believe in his training, in his crew, in his aircraft. The passengers braced for impact, every muscle tensed, every breath held. The screams had subsided into a tense, fearful silence. They trusted the captain, trusted that he would guide them through this nightmare. But in the back of their minds, the fear lingered. The fear that this might be the end. The fear that the systems, screaming in protest, might finally give in. And then, as suddenly as it began, the turbulence ceased. The plane broke through the storm clouds into clear skies. The cabin was filled with a collective sigh of relief, tears of joy and gratitude streaming down faces. Captain Miller's voice came over the intercom, calm and steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have made it through the storm. Thank you for your courage and trust." The nightmare was over, but the memory of when systems screamed would linger forever. plummeting into the abyss. The plane spiraled downwards. Gravity became a malevolent force, pinning passengers to their seats. Luggage tumbled from overhead compartments, adding to the chaos. The air grew thin. Breathing became a struggle. Prayers and apologies filled the cabin, a cacophony of last words. The ground rushed closer, a tapestry of darkness and light. The crash and its echoes. The impact was deafening. Metal shrieked, glass shattered. The world dissolved into a maelstrom of fire, smoke, and screams. Then silence. An eerie, unsettling silence. The once proud aircraft lay broken, a mangled carcass spewing smoke into the night sky. A few flickering lights like dying fireflies were the only signs of life, but the whispers continued, faint echoes in the wreckage. Whispers in the wreckage. Rescue teams arrived to a scene of devastation. The air was thick with the smell of jet fuel and burnt metal. They worked tirelessly, pulling survivors from the wreckage, their faces grim under the glare of the emergency lights. But amidst the chaos and tragedy, stories emerged. Stories of whispers, shadows, and a cold that seeped into their bones. Stories the investigators couldn't explain. As the night wore on, the rescue workers began to notice strange occurrences, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, echoing through the twisted remains of the aircraft. Some said they heard voices calling out names, others claimed to hear cries for help that led them to empty spaces. The shadows seemed to move on their own, dancing in the flickering light of the flashlights, creating an eerie atmosphere that sent shivers down their spines. One worker, a seasoned firefighter, swore he felt a hand on his shoulder, only to turn and find no one there. Another spoke of a sudden drop in temperature, a cold so intense it felt like it was seeping into his very soul. These experiences were shared in hushed tones, as if speaking them aloud would give them more power, make them more real. The stories spread quickly among the teams, each new tale adding to the growing sense of unease. Some tried to rationalize the events, attributing them to stress and exhaustion. But others couldn't shake the feeling that something otherworldly was at play. The wreckage seemed to hold on to the last moments of the flight, replaying them in fragments of sound and shadow. Investigators arrived the next day, combing through the wreckage for clues. They documented everything meticulously, but the strange stories from the night before were harder to record. They listened with skepticism, yet couldn't entirely dismiss the accounts. There was something about the way the rescue workers spoke, a conviction in their eyes that hinted at a deeper truth. As dawn broke, the whispers seemed to fade with the darkness, leaving behind only the physical remnants of the tragedy. But for those who had been there, the memories of that night would linger. The whispers in the wreckage, the shadows that moved on their own, and the bone-chilling cold were not easily forgotten. They became part of the story, a haunting reminder of the night when the line between the living and the dead seemed to blur. Flight 407, an unsolved enigma. The official investigation concluded a catastrophic mechanical failure, a closed case, but the whispers persisted. The stories of the uncanny events on Flight 407 spread, becoming the stuff of legends. Some dismissed it as mass hysteria, others as a cover-up. The truth remained elusive, lost in the wreckage. Flight 407 became a chilling reminder. Sometimes the sky holds terrors we cannot explain, nightmares that linger long after the crash. Flight 407 was a routine journey, a flight like any other, until it wasn't. On that fateful day, the skies were clear, and the weather was perfect for flying. The passengers boarded with no inkling of the horror that awaited them. The aircraft, a marvel of modern engineering, was deemed one of the safest in the fleet. Yet, as it soared through the clouds, something inexplicable happened. Witnesses on the ground reported seeing strange lights around the plane, an eerie glow that defied explanation. Some claimed to have heard a haunting melody emanating from the sky, a sound that sent shivers down their spines. Inside the cockpit, the pilots struggled with controls that seemed to have a mind of their own. Instruments went haywire and communication with air traffic control was lost. Panic set in as the plane veered off course, heading into uncharted territory. Survivors, those few who lived to tell the tale, spoke of a surreal experience. They described a sudden drop in temperature, a bone-chilling cold that enveloped the cabin. Shadows danced along the aisles and whispers filled the air, voices that seemed to come from nowhere. Time itself appeared to warp, with minutes stretching into hours. The wreckage was found days later, scattered across a remote area, far from its intended path. The official report cited mechanical failure, but the evidence was scant. Conspiracy theories flourished, suggesting everything from alien abductions to government experiments gone wrong. Paranormal investigators flocked to the site, hoping to uncover clues that might explain the mystery. Flight 407 remains an enigma, a puzzle with missing pieces. It serves as a stark reminder that despite our technological advancements, there are forces at play that we do not fully understand. The sky, vast and uncharted, holds secrets that continue to elude us. And so, the legend of Flight 407 endures, a chilling tale of the unknown, a story that haunts the annals of aviation history.